to talk about the actual Georgia
I thought we were done.
Well, Ari pointed out yesterday that Georgia's only won 2 national titles in 40 years. And I mean, really, this down in its luck program needs to figure out how to get back to the top. Okay, the 2 titles were the last 2 titles, but they gotta have a new quarterback. And you've been covering a quarterback competition this spring. And we had Cameron Teague Robinson on last week talk Ohio State, and they have a legit like 50-50, 2 guys splitting first team reps quarterback competition going on. Georgia, Carson Beck was QB2 last year behind Stetson Bennett, but Brock Vandagriff is there. Gunnar Stockton is there. How are they handling that quarterback competition?
Going into this, I thought Carson Beck has the edge. It'll be interesting to see if Brock Vandagriff or Gunnar Stockton is able to catch them. And I was 2 separate people that I don't think talk to each other told me before spring, watch out for Gunnar Stockton. You know, he was a true freshman last year, but he was on scout team, and they don't usually put a scholarship quarterback on scout team, but they wanted him to play against the first team offense in practice last year rather than just getting third team reps. But it doesn't seem like he made the move this spring. It seems like Vandagriff made a move, but Beck still has too, because Beck ultimately has that experience. I mean, Kirby has said things like he knows the system very well. It's the kind of stuff that, as much as they would be enamored by Brock Vandagriff's running ability, that they ultimately might lean on the guy who has the experience. They should be okay, because between Carson Beck, Brock Vandagriff, Gunnar Stockton, following Stetson Bennett, they are adhering to the rule of having a quarterback with 2 last names, which is why they're also recruiting and probably the leaders for Dylan Raiola. Ryan Puglisi, the other guy they have, Ryan is also a potential last
Ryan's
name.
a pretty popular last name. Yeah. Yeah. North Carolina's got an ex-player who does radio for them, and his first name is Jones. Like, that's the kind of name you need as a Georgia quarterback or a North Carolina.
That never occurred to me until I was covering South Carolina, and Steve Spurrier made that point about his kicker, Spencer Lanning. He's like, yeah, Spencer Lanning, got 2 last names. And then he would say that every time he referred to him, to the point where I'm not actually sure his name is Spencer Lanning or Lanning Spencer. I think it was Spencer Lanning, but Steve Spurrier, only 1 last name.
So what is it to you about Carson Beck that made you feel that way, Seth, like going into the offseason, like this is the guy, with the way that Georgia's
here, and Ari is just getting me right back.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just don't want you to steal Andy's shine of being the comedian of the show.
Comedy is my shtick. The guest does not come on the show and try to bring his humor.
Please show up, Ari, whenever you can.
Show me up.
That's the only rule.
Yeah, but I have just been genuinely curious about this because of the way that Georgia has recruited the quarterback position the last few years. Who the next person after Stetson was going to be. And you kind of came into the offseason saying it from the beginning that Beck was the guy to beat. And I was just wondering, like, what the manifestation of that whole thing was.
The guy to beat, but not like 100%. Like, and I thought that a lot of this buildup of the spring competition was to keep all 3 on campus and not have one of them, especially Vandagriff, because he'd be the most likely jump in the portal after the spring. I think they probably accomplished that. I think they've given off the impression that Vandagriff has a real shot, to the point that I'm tempted to ask Kirby. I almost did the other night, but you know how it is when you're a beat writer. You kind of hold your questions. You're like, I'm going to ask it maybe after the spring game, whatever. He'll probably be asked after the spring game anyway, because that'll be all about the quarterbacks. But I've been tempted to ask him, could this competition go into the season? Because they're not opening with Oregon or Clemson. They're opening with Tennessee Martin. And then the second week is not at Oklahoma as planned. It's at home against Ball State. Week 3 is at South Carolina, but then week 4 is home against UAB. So it almost sets up perfectly where you have 2 weeks where you could play both quarterbacks, make a decision to roll with one of them at South Carolina, And then if it doesn't work, have another week of experimenting before you start to get into what is, quote unquote, relatively speaking, the meat of the schedule. I don't know if they'll do that. I don't really think, I mean, Kirby tried to be cute a little bit with it with Justin Fields in 2018 and it didn't work.
It's a fake.
Yeah.
All right.
That a whole other thing about it, but I don't know if he'll do that. Once you've got them both there, still on the campus in August, maybe you don't have to do that. I think they'd only do that if they were legitimately torn. But it is between the two of them, and you could kind of throw Gunnar Stockton and say he's kind of in between. It is a contrast in styles. If they go to Carson Beck, they're saying, all right, we really want a pocket guy. We want a guy with a big arm. If they go to Brock Vandagriff, they're saying we really like what we had in Stetson Bennett and a dual threat guy.
Well, and the other piece of this is there's a new offensive coordinator in Mike Bobo, who's not new to Georgia, not new to Kirby Smart, and not new to this offense because he was an analyst there last year and worked with Todd Monken. So is that going to change anything? I mean, Bobo seems to have a type that he likes, but he's also like, I thought he got a lot out of Bo Nix the year he worked with him, and Bo Nix is not necessarily that type. So it feels like they could kind of go any way they want to with it.
Bobo actually recruited Gunnar Stockton to South Carolina the one year he was there, which was another reason that people were like, keep an eye on him. And that could still happen. He could still make a move. But yeah, I mean, I think there's this impression that Kirby and Bobo are both old school. And so it'll be Beck. It'll be a pocket guy. And it may, but Kirby, even before, Kirby is the guy who signed Justin Fields.
Right.
And before he did that, he talked about being enamored of dual threat guys because Deshaun Watson killed his Alabama defense in 2 games that they played in. Not necessarily, and Vandagriff has talked about this, it's not about calling the play where the quarterback runs and having an offense geared about that. It's about the play where the play breaks down and the quarterback saves them. One of Georgia's most memorable plays of the year was the Tennessee game. They're at the 13, and I think it was 3rd down. Stetson Bennett drops back. Tennessee guy gets right in the backfield, but Bennett runs away from him, runs back to the 25, and then runs for the pylon and scores. Carson Beck can't do that. Brock Vandagriff, I'm not sure if he can, but he has a better chance of doing it.